Oh. All right, people, you ready?
No.
Great. Did I hear a yes? You did? Good.
Yes.
Okay, so today's notes are going to be a little bit more graphing than yesterday. So take a look at your number 1. If I wanted you to find the inverse, remember that's f to the minus 1. Remember that's what inverse means. Okay, you switch the x to a y just like we did yesterday. So you're going to have 2y minus 7 plus 3 equals 0. Yeah? Oh wait, not 0, equals x from yesterday. So I switch the letters x and y. I'm going to resolve to get y by itself. What do I do first? Okay, minus the 3. So I have 2 y minus 7 in the square root. 3's are gone. X minus 3 is left over. Okay, how do I get rid of a whole number? You put a fraction. So if it's a 2, I'm going to put a 1/2. And then remember that if you're putting a 1/2, you do not distribute. You're going to leave it in front with a set of parentheses. These guys are gone. Okay, from here, I have y minus 7, 1/2 x minus 3. From here, to get rid of the square root, you have to square both sides. Here and here. And then these guys cross out. Y minus 7 is left over. What's your last step? Good. So I have 1/2 x minus 3 squared plus 7 to cross it out. Okay, let's talk about the transformations for the original and the transformations for the inverse. So f of x is the original. It is the square root. Which way is it shifted with the minus 7?
It's going to the right 7.
To the right 7. And then I have a plus 3 at the back. That's going to shift it up 3. Okay, then do y'all remember what the 2 in the front does?
It moves it. It stretches it.
It's a stretch. It's a vertical stretch.
So if it's positive stretch, then it's what's if it's more than one? Well, it's more,
Yeah.
more than one.
So remember that if the number in the front is a whole number, it is a stretch.
Like the other one is going to be a compression.
And if it's a number that is less than 1, it's going to be a compression.
So
Okay.
vertical stretch of 2.
Vertical stretch by a factor of 2. By a factor of 2. That's how it would be written. Okay? So, let's take a look at the second one now. We're looking at this right here. So if I have a minus 3 in the middle, that's a shift which direction?
Right.
To the right 3.
Up 7.
Okay, plus 7 is an up 7. Okay, now be very careful. Here's the difference. If it's in the very front, it's a vertical stretch or compression. If it's on the inside, it's the opposite of what you would think. So if it's a 1/2, that means it's actually, normally that would be a compression. But if it's on the inside, that means it's actually a stretch. Well, actually, it's by a factor of 2. Okay, so let me say that one more time because I don't think we really covered that. Technically, that's more of an Algebra 2 thing. Here's what's supposed to happen. The number in the very front, if it's on the outside of the parentheses, if it's bigger than 1, it's a stretch, smaller than 1, it's a compression. But if it's on the inside, just like x, you know how x is always the opposite? Once I pull it inside, all of a sudden it does the opposite. So if it's a 1/2 on the inside, that's like a 2 on the outside. If it's a 2 on the inside, that's really a compression. So it's always backwards if it's on the inside. Same thing with your x, that's why you go the opposite way of the symbol it says. It'd be a compression. Okay, so take a look now for me, please, at your first example with graphing. Okay, so I have a minus 2 here, so I'll go right 2 and then up 5. So my starting point is 2, 5. So I go over 2, up 5, that puts me here. Now notice, yesterday your first graph was always a u. That is not the case. This time we're starting with the square root. So remember, your square root graph, you're going to start at your point. You're going to kind of doink off to the side. Okay, so there's my starting point, 2, 5. Go off to the side. Yesterday, when we started with the u, the domain was always all real numbers. That's not the case for square roots. For my square root, where does it not start till? What does my x start at?
2, 5.
Well, only the x.
Oh, 2.
2. So it'd be from 2 till infinity, bracket, parentheses. Then for my range, how low does it start? And it's 5 till infinity. Okay, now let's do what we did yesterday, see if it all still works out the same. So I'm going to switch my x into a y. So it will be the square root of y minus 2. And then remember, you're setting it equal to x. This is for the inverse. Remember, the symbol for that is f to the negative 1 of x.
Done.
Okay, so I'm going to minus the 5 across. So I get x minus 5 left over. On the other side, I have a y minus 2. Next step, what do we do? Square. Remember, to get rid of a square root, you have to square both sides. Then these guys cross out. My y minus 2 comes down from the middle because my square root is gone. And then my last step, if I have a minus 2 here, I'm going to move it over across as a plus 2. So I have x minus 5 squared plus 2.
This is a starting point right there.
Starting point is right here, yeah?
Oh, yeah, that.
So for my starting point,
5, 2.
okay, my minus 5 turns to a plus 5, comma, 2, that's correct. Then I go to 5, 2 on my graph. What shape is x squared, though? That is a u. So I draw my u, and my graph, you should remember from yesterday, is all messed up. Yesterday, both of them were u's. One of the u's opened up or down, the other u opened to the side. Okay, so this is a problem. These are not the same shape like they were yesterday. Not the same shape. Yesterday, they were both u's. That was perfect. But now, one of them's a u, one of them is only half of a u. So, come down here to this little star. Says, notice that the domain and range are not exactly the same. What is the domain of my u shape? All real numbers. And remember that these guys are supposed to match each other. Okay, and then the range of that would be from 2 until infinity. So my domain and range here and here, these are fine, but these guys are messed up. Not the same, and they're supposed to be. Here's the problem. Okay, it says right here, because you have only one branch for the square root. Remember yesterday we had a plus or minus on all of the square roots? Remember it was a plus and a minus? Okay, if you start with a square root, you can only pick one side of your parabola. So this is what I mean by that. If you have a positive square root, you are going to take the right side only of the parabola. Okay, so you are going to use x greater than the vertex. If you want the negative square root, okay, and that's what you're given at the very beginning. If they start you off with the negative, that corresponds to the left side. And you're going to use x is less than the vertex. So if you start off with the squared, you don't have to worry about anything. But if you start off with the square root, you only have half of the graph. So when you go to the inverse, you have to pick a side of the graph. So I'll show you what that looks like on the back. So turn the page when you're ready. So a positive square root goes with the right side. A negative square root goes with the left side. So so let's take a look at our first example. Okay, doing it with, this is called a restricted domain. Okay, so first one, where am I going to do my start point for number 3?
Negative 3 up 1.
Okay, negative 3 up 1, good. Negative 3, 1 is here. Do I have a positive square root or a negative square root?
Positive.
Positive square root, that means my graph goes like that. And remember that a positive square root, I'm going to write over here, goes with a right side only. We'll talk about what that means in a second. But a positive square root goes with a right side only. What if it had been a negative? I would pick the left side. Okay, so let's switch our x and y. So it's going to be y plus 3 plus 1 equals x. This is for our inverse. What do I do first? Minus the 1. So I have x minus 1 here. I have y plus 3 here. What's my next step? Square both sides. All this should look familiar. Okay, we already did this before. Square both sides. Then remember, my square to my square root, these guys cross out with each other. Y plus 3 gets carried down. Then what do I do with the plus 3? Minus 3 here, minus 3 here. So right here it says f to the negative 1 equals, you're going to put x minus 1 squared minus 3. 4. Okay, now we're going to do that in a second. So write 4 and then leave a little blank. Come over to your graph. Where am I going to put my new start point for my graph? Okay, 1 negative 3, good. So that would be here. Don't draw it yet. Normally, I would be drawing an entire U, right? But I don't want the entire U. Which side do I want? The right side only. So if you draw the whole U, you're going to erase this chunk off, and you're only going to have that chunk right there. Okay? And you should notice that now my graphs match each other. Inverses should always match each other in terms of their shape. So, how do we,
Why do we have to do that?
Because if this is a U and that's only one side, they don't match. But if I cut the other side off, now they match each other.
So is that only for inverse?
It's only for inverses when you start with the square root.
Okay.
Okay? So, here is how you're going to write that in your equation. You're going to put 4 x's, right side is greater than, and then what is this x value of my vertex?
Negative. 1.
1. So I put for x is greater than or equal to 1. And what that means is, I'm not taking the whole u, I'm only taking the right side.
So if it was on the left side, it would be x is greater than.
It'd be less than
less than.
to 1, correct. Okay? So if it's a right side, it's a greater than, left side is a less than. Okay, let's go down. Actually, let's do the domain and range for it, and then we'll go on. Okay, what is the domain for the first graph? That's this purple one right here. Negative 3 to infinity. What's my range? Okay, 1 to infinity. Now let's switch to my second graph, which is the right side only over there. Okay, right side only. What is my domain for that blue graph right there? Okay, it's from 1 to infinity. And now what's my range? Good. 1 to infinity and negative 3 to infinity. And now do you notice that these guys match each other again, just like they're supposed to from yesterday? But you have to pick one side or the other, not both, if you start with the square root. Okay, look at the next one. Okay, we have a root x plus 7. Which way are we shifting?
Right.
Up, down, left, right if the plus 7's here. Up 7. So it'd be 0, 7. Draw your dot. 0, 7's right there. And then look at your root. Is it a positive root or a negative root? Okay, so it's a positive root. That means it goes like this, and I'm going to want the right side only. Right side only. So switch your letters, solve for your inverse, but then I'm going to want only the right side of my parabola. Okay, so I'm going to have root y plus 7 equals x. This is for my inverse. What do I do first?
Minus 7.
Okay, minus the 7 across. So I have x minus 7 equals root y,
Square.
then square and square. And remember that when you square, you need to apply parentheses because that negative 7's over there with the x. They're getting squared together. So I have y equals x minus 7 squared, 4. And then I'm going to have to pick a side. So let's go to our graph. What's my starting point?
7.
If it's a minus 7 here, that means it's going to move to the side 7, 0. That puts me here. And then which side did we say we want?
The right.
The right side only. So I'm going to start at 7, do my greater than, x greater than or equal to 7. And that tells me that I'm only using the right side. And then when you look at your graphs, you should see that now their shapes match each other. Each of them is only half of a U, which is what we want. Okay? Now, if you were to check the domain of the first graph, that's this one, what would my domain be for the yellow graph I just highlighted?
7.
Domain.
0.
0 to infinity. What would my range be? How low is it?
0.
7 to infinity. But then for my new graph, you should see that those are reversed. For this graph here, we'll highlight it in blue. Okay, what's my domain? 7 to infinity. And then what's my range?
0.
Good. Alright, turn the page when you're ready. We're going to do 2 with negatives on them, and then you guys will have time to work on your homework. Good? Okay. Take a look at the next one. What's my starting point?
2, 8.
Okay, positive 2, 8.
This negative.
2, 8 is here. And then when I look at my graph, I notice that this is a negative root. That means I'm going to have to curve down, and I'm going to want a left side only. Yeah.
So when it's negative, it goes down by letting it like that.
It only goes backwards if the negative is on the inside. And you're not going to see those for these, but it would look like this. If you wanted to reflect backwards, we did do one of those, I think, yesterday. It would be negative in there. Do you remember that? But if it's on the outside, like this, it's going to reflect it down. That's a good question. Okay, so we have our down square root. Okay, now we're ready to find our inverse. So y minus 2. Oops, now it's y minus 2 plus 8 equals x. Okay, minus the 8 across, good. X minus 8 on the other side equal to, then I have negative y minus 2. Next step. Normally, you would have to get rid of that negative. However, when you square both sides, what's going to happen to that negative? Yeah, it's going to turn positive anyway, so watch. When I apply my squared here, that's going to also cancel out my little negative. Negative cancels out when you square both sides. So once that guy gets squared on both sides, that negative is gone anyway. I just have a y minus 2 left over. Then from there, x minus 8 squared. What do I do with the minus 2? Add it and add it. So I have f inverse equals x minus 8 squared plus 2, 4, and then I'm going to have to pick a side right here. So let's graph it first and see where we're going to have to go from. What's my starting point for my new graph?
8, 2.
Okay, it's going to be a positive 8, 2.
And you want the left side.
And I'm going to want the left side only. So 8, 2 is right here. And then I'm going to draw only the left side. Now, think about, for this new graph, I'm going to highlight it in yellow. Does it make sense that I would be doing an x less than?
Yes.
Yeah, because which way is my arrow going?
Left.
To the left. Where is it going to the left from? What x value? 8.
So left 8.
So x less than or equal to 8. And that corresponds to the fact that I only drew the left side, which goes with a negative square root. Okay? Alright, we'll do one more, but we'll just do it off your homework. So, take a look at your homework. Which one has the negative on it? Number 11. Let's do number 11. Yeah. This is off your homework. Off your homework. Okay, first thing, what's your starting point? This is 11 off your homework.
7, 3.
Okay, 7, 3. So 7, 3, that's a little graph right there. Normally my square root goes up, but I notice I have a negative. That means I want it to go
Drop down.
down. And if it's going down, which side am I going to want? Left side only. Okay, now look at your graph. What is my domain for that guy that I just drew? 7 to infinity. And then for my range, how low does that arrow go if it points down forever and ever? Negative infinity till when? When does it stop? 3. So remember, you always want to go lowest first, highest second. Okay, after we draw our original, we're going to find our inverse, and then we're going to graph the left side only. So it's going to be negative square root y minus 7 plus 3 x. This is for your inverse. What do we do first?
Subtract 3.
Okay, plus 3 minus 3. These guys cross out. I have an x minus 3 left over on the other side. Is the negative an extra step?
No.
No. When I square both sides, what's going to happen to that negative? It's going to go away on its own. So I'm not even worried about that negative. It's going to cancel itself out when I square. So these guys cross out with each other. Y minus 7 comes down from the middle. Y minus 7 is equal to x minus 3 squared. And then I add the 7 across. So it's x minus 3 squared plus 7, 4, and then I'm going to have to pick a side. So let's draw our graph. We're going to draw only the left side, and then we're going to fill in the blank on which half we want. So where's my starting point for this new guy going to be? Negative 3 turns to a positive 3, and then a 7. 3, 7 is here. And then I want only the left side. That means I'm going that way. And if I want only the left side, then I'm doing x less than or equal to what x?
Less than or equal to
3. And it should always be the x value of your starting point. So if I'm starting at 3, the right side's greater than or equal to 3, the left side is less than or equal. Okay, then for my little purple graph, okay, we'll highlight it in yellow. What's my domain? How far does it go back on the left side? It goes from negative infinity till 3. Does that look familiar? Okay, it should. That was your old range. So my new domain is my old range. And then when I want the range of this highlighted guy, my lowest point is 7. Goes up to infinity. So it's 7 to infinity. Then remember, your number gets a bracket, your infinity gets a parentheses. Okay? All right, you have about 20 minutes to work on your homework. Do we want to do one off the front?
Yes.
You're only solving up there. I don't care. Okay, no, the whole front though, guys, y'all know how to do that. You're just switching to X and Y. It's the easy part. So let's do 3. 3's harder. Okay, you're going to do 3 root y minus 2 plus 4 equals X. And then you're going to solve. That's it.
Did you get one?
So what do I do first?
You subtract 4.
Subtract the 4. So then I have 3 square root y minus 2 equals X minus 4. How do you get rid of a whole number? By 1/3. Remember, to get rid of a 3, you have to put a 1/3 on both sides. Those guys are partners. Just like if it was a 2, I'd put a half. So I'm going to put a 1/3 here, 1/3 here with parentheses. Do you distribute?
No.
No. Okay, these guys cross out. 3rd and 3 are gone. Y minus 2 is left over under a square root. How do we get rid of it?
Square.
Square and square. So I have y minus 2 equals 1/3 x minus 4 squared. And then what do we do with the minus 2? Plus it and plus it.
Okay,
These
so-
guys cross out.
But a number like 1 and 5, it's like the number inside. Do you divide or do you?
Okay, we can do, I didn't realize there was a number on the inside. Yeah, we can do that for number 1. Okay, so that'd be your answer. Now notice that if you're not having to pick a side, you don't have to put x greater than or less than. Okay, look at number 1. What do I do first?
Square root.
Well, I'm going to rewrite it first, but then yeah. So 2y plus 4 equals x, that's your step 1. And then on this one, I can't get rid of that plus 4 if it's inside the house. I have to square first. So I'm going to square and square. The square and the square root cross out with each other. 2y plus 4 comes down from the middle. And then x squared stays by itself. What's my next step? Minus the 4. So I have 2y equals x squared minus 4. And then how do I get rid of a 2 in the front? What do you put? A 1/2.
I keep wanting to
Do you distribute the 1/2? No. 1/2 and 2 cross out. That's your answer.
Okay, that's not it.
I don't know, I thought it was good for a second.
Then also remember on ones like number 5 where you have a negative in the front, when you square both sides, what's going to happen to that negative? It's going to cross out anyway. Okay. Do we want to do one of the bottom 2 where it's starting off as a squared? That was yesterday's. Yeah, let's do 8. Okay, number 8, remember you switch the x and y? So it'd be 1/3 y minus 8 squared plus 5 equals x. What do you do first? Minus 5 minus 5. So I have 1/3 y minus 8 squared x minus 5. Next step, now I have a fraction. How do you get rid of a 1/3? Times by 3. So remember, a fraction and a whole number, those are going to cancel each other out. So 3 1/3 are gone. Y minus 8 squared comes down. What's my next step?
Square root.
Square root, square root. Squared and square root cross out. Y minus 8 comes down. What goes in front of the square root?
Plus or minus.
Yep. And then to get rid of the minus 8, you're going to plus 8. And that'd be your answer. So plus or minus square root, 3 on the inside, x minus 5, and then a plus 8. Now, real quick, let's just talk about the transformation for that guy. What would the minus 5 do? Which way would I be shifting? Left or right? Right? What about the plus 8? Up. Is that a compression or a stretch? It would be a stretch, but if it's on the inside, its job changes. What's it really? Compression. So be careful about when the number's in the middle, it does the opposite of what you would think it would do. Just like when the minus 5 is in there, we really go plus 5. Okay? Yeah.
Would
All right, y'all have the rest of class to finish.
We're just gonna leave the modification.
Yep. And you just put it outside of your parentheses. JB's notes are just always so good, you know.